Barack Obama stepped into the Great Hall, where soft lights swept over polished marble floors. Tall columns framed walls hung with portraits of past presidents, and each painting seemed to watch over every guest. The air smelled faintly of fresh flowers and fine wood polish. Waiters in crisp uniforms carried trays of sparkling wine and delicate hors d'oeuvres. A gentle murmur of conversation drifted through the room as senators, ambassadors, and longtime aides exchanged quiet greetings. Obama paused for a moment at the doorway. He felt the weight of history here in this place where so many important moments had unfolded. Even before he spoke, he knew this evening would join the stories told about him one day. He made his way toward the head table, where soft golden light illuminated faces uplifted in expectation. Some in the crowd recognized him and offered warm smiles and subtle nods. Others looked on politely, as to a familiar leader returning to a familiar stage. He felt a gentle pride as he was guided to his seat. Today he would honor the work of public servants and remind them how their efforts shaped the nation's future. His heart lifted at the thought of reminding everyone why they had come here to celebrate unity and common purpose. Yet even as he settled in, something tugged at his mind. From the corner of his eye, he spotted a small knot of cameras near a side entrance. The lens flashes pulsed like a heartbeat independent of his own calm breath. His gaze followed the cluster, curious. A murmur reached him. John F. Kennedy Jr. was in the room.
Oh.
Obama paused, turning halfway in his chair. John Kennedy was not an invited guest. His presence here felt out of place, a ripple in the evening's planned rhythm. The name carried a reputation both bright and complicated. So many people still remembered the tragic accident that had taken John's life too soon when he was just a boy. He had grown up under public scrutiny. Even now, more than 30 years later, his family's story remained inseparable from this nation's history. Obama's mind raced through what this could mean. Would his speech lose focus if so many cameras pointed elsewhere? He watched as Kennedy, dressed in a classic dark suit and crisp white shirt, leaned in to greet an older senator who had served decades before Obama's own time in office. People around them whispered excitedly and nudged each other, trying to get a better look. Obama saw flashbulbs pop like distant fireworks. He wondered if the crowd would remember his carefully chosen words or the dramatic image of a Kennedy making an unscheduled appearance. An aide leaned forward, voice low and urgent. "Sir, security is ready if you want to ask him to leave." Obama nodded slowly, weighing his options. He did not like the idea of causing a scene. He prided himself on finding common ground, on handling surprises with dignity. But he also felt responsibility to keep the focus on the evening's true purpose. If everyone's attention stayed drawn to this unscheduled guest, the message he planned to share might feel lost beneath the excitement of celebrity. He shifted in his seat, smoothing his suit jacket. Across the table, Michelle gave him an encouraging look. She knew him well. She knew how much he cared about unity and respect. Her eyes asked, "What should we do?" He offered a small, reassuring smile. He did not want to embarrass Kennedy or fuel gossip. He wanted a way to honor the ceremony without alienating anyone. Still, he felt the urge to protect the gathering's purpose. The Mater D passed by, discreetly signaling security officers standing near the doors. Two of them exchanged quick glances. Nearby, guests continued to chatter and laugh softly. Unaware of the tension building behind closed diplomatic notes and polite toasts, Obama cleared his throat, inhaled gently, and raised a hand to signal his aide. The aide leaned closer, bringing a small earpiece through which a whisper passed. At that moment, Obama realized how delicate the moment had become. He could nod, and the plan to escort Kennedy out would go forward. Or he could find another way, maybe invite him to join the event in a respectful role, rather than quietly push him out. He studied John Kennedy Jr.'s back as he spoke to the senator. Kennedy's shoulders were broad but carried a cautious posture, as if he knew he did not entirely belong here. The crowd's eyes looked to him now, curious and eager. Obama recognized that some might see forceful removal as a harsh response. He thought about his own values, respect, finding grace in unexpected moments. He imagined how the story would unfold later in news columns. A former president ordering the removal of an uninvited guest. He wondered whether headlines would overshadow his carefully prepared remarks. In that instant, he made a decision. He lowered his hand and signaled to the aide that no action was needed. Instead, he would address the situation after his own arrival. At the podium, he leaned back, listening carefully as the band quieted and guests settled into their seats. A hush fell. All eyes slowly turned toward the stage at the front of the room. Obama stood, smoothing the lapels of his jacket with quiet confidence. As he walked forward, he felt the soft echo of his shoes on the marble floor. Photographers rose, shifting their cameras toward him. Flashbulbs popped in unison, lighting up the hall with bursts of brilliant white. He paused at the edge of the platform, glanced over at Kennedy, and offered a brief nod of acknowledgement. The gesture was small, but deliberate. Kennedy paused, meeting his gaze. Then he offered a slight smile and returned to his conversation, as though an unspoken dialogue had passed between them. Obama took the microphone. A gentle wave of applause washed over him and then receded, leaving a calm stillness. He began to speak, his voice warm and clear, carrying through the hall. "Good evening," he said. "Tonight we gather to honor those who devote their lives to service, to remember the work that binds us together, and to celebrate the enduring promise of our democracy." His words flowed steadily as he painted pictures of community clinics, neighborhood schools, and families helped by compassionate policies. He shared stories of volunteers who taught children to read and neighbors who rebuilt homes after storms. Every sentence was chosen to weave connections between people of different backgrounds, to remind them of shared hope. Behind him, seen by most, Kennedy shifted in his seat. His interest was clear, and Obama sensed that this uninvited presence did not distract, but deepened the evening's meaning. It reminded everyone that history is alive, with threads connecting past and present in unexpected ways. Obama glanced toward the side where Kennedy sat, noticing how Kennedy now listened with genuine intent, no longer a figure of sensational surprise, but of shared humanity. When Obama finished his opening remarks, applause filled the room again. It was warm and sustained, marking approval not just for his words, but for the spirit of the moment. He stepped back from the microphone, heart light with relief. The purpose of the night remained intact. He had chosen inclusion over removal, understanding over confrontation. In that choice, he felt the essence of leadership to bring people together, even when surprises arise. To find unity in moments that could easily divide. As he walked back to his seat, he caught a final glance from Kennedy. It held respect, gratitude, and a quiet acknowledgement of what had just passed between them. Obama returned the look and settled in, ready to enjoy the rest of the evening. The hall's grand walls and portraits seemed to smile down upon them, both as though history itself approved. In that moment, every guest witnessed a lesson beyond the scheduled program. True leadership often means embracing the unexpected and letting grace guide the way. Barack Obama sat at the long, gleaming table and watched the cluster of cameras by the side entrance. Each flash felt like a pulse, and each pulse tugged at his mind. He adjusted the cuff of his jacket, hoping to steady the flutter in his chest. The polished silverware in front of him caught the light, gleaming like watchful eyes. Around him, fellow guests murmured polite greetings as they leaned in to share small talk. But Obama's attention stayed fixed on the circle of reporters and photographers gathering around John F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy stood a few feet from the wall, speaking quietly to a reporter. His voice carried over the soft music playing in the background. Every so often the cameras clicked with renewed urgency. Obama could see the faint crease between Kennedy's brows, the same crease his uncle had worn in old photographs. He remembered those black and white images of the young president, tall and hopeful, standing under a bright sky. Now Kennedy Jr. carried that same weighty history on his shoulders. Yet here he was, uninvited, drawing more attention than anyone else in the room. An aide leaned in, whispering in Obama's ear, "Yes, sir, if you'd like us to intervene. Security is standing by." The aide's voice was quiet but urgent, as though afraid of being overheard. Obama took a slow breath. He knew the aide spoke out of loyalty, wanting to protect the evening's purpose. The gala was meant to celebrate community service, to cast light on ordinary heroes. It was not supposed to become a spectacle centered on a celebrity guest.
Yet,
He hesitated, unsure if calling security to remove Kennedy would feel harsh or dismissive. Across the table, Michelle touched his arm gently. Her hand was calm, reassuring. She offered a small, encouraging smile, the kind she always knew how to give when he faced a hard choice. He turned slightly toward her and saw concern in her eyes. She did not want him to seem unkind or petty. He nodded almost imperceptibly, signaling her understanding. In that quiet exchange, he remembered how much they had faced together: public scrutiny, endless decisions, moments when every move was watched and judged. She had always reminded him to choose compassion, even when it was not easy. Behind him, a soft whisper floated from one staff member to another. If Kennedy speaks, he might scoop his own speech and steal the show. The whisper traveled like wildfire through other aides and officials. Obama felt the tension tighten around him, an invisible cord pulling at his shoulders. He imagined headlines the next day. Former president cuts speech short to remove JFK Jr. The thought made him wince. He did not want to be remembered for ejecting an uninvited guest, especially someone whose family name carried such weight in American history. He leaned back in his chair, momentarily closing his eyes. He pictured his own father's stories of standing up for what he believed, of choosing the right path over the easy one. He thought of the many times he had spoken about grace under pressure. This was a moment when he needed to practice what he preached. He opened his eyes and signaled to his senior aide without drawing too much attention. The aide approached quietly, and Obama whispered a single word: "Wait." The aide's face showed relief and confusion all at once. He leaned in, and Obama spoke softly, "Hold off for now. Let me think." The aide nodded and melted quietly into the background. For an instant, the room seemed to inhale. Conversations paused. The band stopped playing for a breath, and even the clinking of glasses slowed. In that suspended moment, Obama felt the hush of hundreds of people holding their breath. He studied Kennedy's profile. The younger man lifted a glass of water to his lips and took a calm sip. He was dressed in a dark suit that fit him, as if tailored for his grandfather's portrait, and his hair was neatly cropped. In his hand, he held a folded program for the evening. Obama wondered if Kennedy had come prepared to make a speech or if he simply wanted to witness the ceremony. He considered the possibility that Kennedy, too, might feel out of place in this formal setting. Far from the headlines and public events where he was used to being welcomed, a waiter passed by with a tray of small sandwiches. The soft swirl of conversation returned as guests reached for bites and whispered comments. Obama recognized a senator from his administration and exchanged a nod. The senator raised an eyebrow toward the cameras, then looked back at Obama silently. Asking what to do? Obama shook his head slightly, signaling him to stay calm. He stood and reached for his water glass, taking a deliberate sip to steady his voice and his thoughts. As he set the glass down, he caught Michelle's eye again. She mouthed, "Are you sure?" He offered a gentle smile and a slight shrug. "We'll see," he answered in his mind. He did not want to close doors or create a scene. Instead, he wanted to bring the evening back to its true purpose. He could handle surprises. He'd faced them many times before. This was one more test of his resolve, a chance to remind everyone that leadership meant finding unity rather than forcing division. He rose from his seat just as the band resumed a soft melody. His movement drew the room's attention back to him. Cameras shifted focus, flashes popping in acknowledgement of the former president who now stood at the head table. Some guests applauded quietly, while others watched with polite interest. Obama straightened his jacket, smoothed the lapel, and offered a gracious nod. He moved to the small dais at the side of the room, where he would speak in just a few moments. Walking toward the stage, felt the familiar tap of marble under his shoes, the hush of expectancy settling over the audience. He paused for a heartbeat, glanced toward Kennedy again, and then faced forward, toward the podium. The microphone stood ready, its silver body polished to a mirror sheen. He placed both hands gently on either side of the stand and inhaled deeply. He could feel the collective pulse of the crowd, their eagerness for his words. He would not let this moment be derailed by an unplanned guest. He began with a calm, confident voice. "Good evening, everyone," he said, letting the greeting settle like a warm blanket over the room. Spoke of service and sacrifice, of community gardens and neighborhood watch groups, of teachers inspiring young minds and volunteers feeding the hungry. As he wove his stories together, the tension that had built around Kennedy's presence eased. The room listened, drawn in by his narrative, its heart returning to the reason they had gathered. All the while, Obama kept a steady gaze on the audience, but he often allowed his eyes to drift toward Kennedy's seat. He saw how the younger man now sat quietly, attentive. No longer did he stand as a disruptor. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, as though absorbing every word. The flashbulbs no longer popped around him. Cameras had turned back to the speaker, their bright eyes refocused. In that change, Obama felt the shift he had hoped for: attention, restored to the ceremony's purpose, yet with room for history's next chapter to unfold without conflict. By the time he paused for a breath, applause filled the hall. The sense of relief that washed over him was almost physical. He had chosen patience and grace, and it had guided the evening back to unity. He stepped back from the microphone, offering a gracious nod before returning to his seat. As he walked, he caught Kennedy's eye one last time. They shared a brief, respectful glance, an understanding that no harsh words or forced removal were needed to maintain dignity. Back at the head table, Obama settled into his seat. He reopened his program quietly, following along with the scheduled speeches. He felt the afternoon light shift as the chandeliers dimmed slightly, adjusting for the evening ahead. Conversations resumed around him, but the mood now held a new warmth. The night was no longer threatened by tension. Instead, it carried the promise of thoughtful reflection and shared purpose. In that moment, Obama understood something important. Leadership often meant holding still, listening to your own values and trusting that respect could guide the way. Through uncertainty, he raised his glass in a silent toast to the room, to the volunteers and public servants present, and perhaps in his own private thought, to the uninvited guest who had reminded him, and everyone else, of the power of unexpected grace. Barack Obama felt the soft hum of anticipation shift around him as the program moved closer to his keynote address. He stood behind the podium, watching the crowd fill every chair and spill into the back of the grand hall. The chandeliers overhead cast a warm glow on polished wood panels and the subtle gold trim of the ceilings. Waiters placed glasses of water at each setting and passed trays of small desserts among the guests. The low murmur of conversation rose and fell like the gentle swell of waves, each voice a reminder that this night was about many people coming together. Just as the orchestra struck a soft chord to signal a pause before his speech, Obama noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. Two security officers stepped forward from their posts near the side entrance. They wore dark suits that blended into the crowd, but their focused expressions and brisk steps marked them as guardians of order. They approached a small table close to the wall, where John F. Kennedy Jr. sat quietly, program in hand. As the officers neared, a hush seemed to spread through onlookers who spotted them, curiosity rippling outward. Like a pebble dropped in still water, people shifted in their seats. Forks paused mid-air. Conversation stopped in mid-sentence. The bright lenses of cameras turned toward Kennedy's table, ready to capture whatever might come next. Obama felt a tightening in his chest. He knew what was about to happen. His aides had prepared for this possibility, reminding him of his earlier decision to wait before acting. But that decision did not make this moment any easier. He sensed the crowd holding its breath, waiting for the unscripted drama to unfold. At the table, Kennedy looked up from the program, his brow furrowed in mild surprise. He straightened in his chair as the officers approached, their faces polite, but firm. A reporter nearby whispered urgently to a photographer, "He's uninvited." They're escorting him out. The reporter's words traveled quickly, drawing the attention of more guests. The soft strain of music in the background faded into silence, as though the hall itself strained to listen. Kennedy rose slowly, folding his program in one hand. He offered a courteous nod to the officer closest to him, as if acknowledging a polite request. Even in this moment, he carried himself with the poise of someone who grew up in the glare of public attention. His dark suit fit him well, and his posture was straight, showing a quiet confidence. Yet Obama could see a flicker of tension in Kennedy's shoulders, an unspoken understanding that this invitation was not official. Some in the room gasped softly. Others whispered, "He's being escorted out." The sound of clicking cameras grew louder, flashes exploding like silent fireworks. Obama's heart beat faster as he watched from the podium. He could feel the weight of expectation pressing on him. Would he let the officers remove Kennedy without a word? Would he intervene or stay silent? He knew that either choice would be noticed and judged. The moment felt suspended in time. Kennedy took a small step forward, following the officer's lead. His path took him along the edge of the dining tables, close enough for many guests to reach out and touch his sleeve if they dared. Some people leaned forward in their seats, straining to catch every movement. A hush fell again as he reached the area set aside as an aisle to the main exit. The security officers walked at his sides, their proximity a clear sign of official action. The crowd tensed, waiting for the scene to play out. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of continuing toward the exit, Kennedy paused, turned back, lifting one hand in a calm, deliberate gesture. The cameras clicked faster now, but he did not hurry. He walked back to the small dais set for speakers, his steps measured. A ripple of surprise coursed through the audience. It exchanged incredulous glances. The officers hesitated, unsure whether to stop him or follow him. Kennedy reached the edge of the stage and stood, looking out at the crowd and then up at Obama at the podium. For a moment, nobody spoke. Two men looked at each other, leaders from different times linked in this unscripted moment. Obama met Kennedy's gaze and offered a small nod, an unspoken question, and an invitation. Kennedy nodded back, as though seeking permission, and found it in the calm acceptance shining in Obama's eyes. The crowd was silent, waiting. Then Kennedy turned his head, gazing out at the 100 or so guests now hushed in the grand hall. His voice began softly, but carried with clear strength. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, "and I thank you for allowing me this moment." His tone was respectful, measured, and sincere. The audience leaned in closer, drawn by his unexpected presence and the warmth in his voice. He paused, looking at Obama. Then he continued, "Mr. President, tonight you honor those who serve with dedication and compassion. You remind us that this nation's strength comes from its people. Tonight I would like to add a few words, not as a distraction, but as a tribute." Kennedy took a gentle breath and spoke of his own family's legacy, the hopes and dreams. His parents carried for the country the sense of duty passed down through generations, the quiet courage of ordinary citizens who worked behind the scenes. He recounted a memory of his grandmother teaching him to look people in the eye and to listen with an open heart. His words painted images of simple axe neighbors sharing soup during a winter storm, volunteers building a playground for children, and a group of strangers holding hands in prayer after tragedy. As he spoke, the crowd's focus shifted from the formality of the gala to the substance of his message. Guests leaned forward, some closing their eyes as though savoring each sentence. A woman in the front row dabbed at her eyes with a small tissue. Obama watched from his place at the podium, the surprise in his own heart giving way to admiration. Kennedy's voice echoed in the stillness. Weaving history and hope into a tapestry of gratitude, he continued, "We remember the past with respect. We celebrate the present with gratitude. And we look to the future with faith that service and compassion will guide us." Kennedy's words carried a gentle conviction, reminding everyone that true leadership comes from acts of kindness as much as from grand speeches. The room seemed to glow with a quiet energy, as if the chandeliers themselves shone a little brighter. When he finished, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then applause began softly, building steadily into a sustained ovation. The sound rolled over Kennedy like a wave, and he bowed his head in thanks before stepping to the side. Obama rose from the podium and walked over, extending his hand. Kennedy took it, and the two men shook hands firmly, sharing a fleeting smile that spoke of mutual respect. The security officers, now relaxed, stepped back into the crowd, their duty complete, as Obama led Kennedy back to his seat at the head table. Guests turned back to their places, conversations picking up with new warmth. The atmosphere shifted from tension to unity, as if Kennedy's words had smoothed over any discomfort. Cameras no longer snapped wildly. Instead, they recorded a moment of grace. Obama returned to his podium, ready to continue the night's program, his own speech, enriched by the unexpected tribute he had just witnessed. He began again. "Thank you, John, for those moving words." His voice was steady, filled with genuine appreciation. He spoke of the power of joining history and hope in one room, lifting each other up through unexpected moments of understanding. The audience listened, nodding in agreement. The evening's purpose, the celebration of service, compassion, and unity resumed with renewed energy. Later, as guests mingled and shared stories, many would recall this part of the night as the most memorable. They would speak of the surprise that became a moment of connection, of how a planned program became something more alive and genuine when two leaders from different eras spoke from the heart. And Barack Obama would remember how that unexpected interruption by John F. Kennedy Jr. reminded him and everyone else that true leadership often emerges in the spaces between the lines, when grace and respect guide the way through uncertainty. Barack Obama guided John F. Kennedy Jr. back to the head table, amid warm applause that still lingered in the air. The grand hall glowed under soft light, and the polished marble floor reflected the quiet energy of the evening. Guests turned in their seats to watch the two men walk side by side, their expressions kind and respectful. As they reached the head table, Obama offered Kennedy the seat beside him, a small gesture that carried great meaning. Kennedy nodded in thanks and sat, smoothing his jacket and folding his program neatly on the table. The audience watched with curious smiles and renewed warmth. A moment the gala felt more personal, more alive. The presence of two generations of leadership sitting together made the space hum with history and possibility. Waiters resumed their gentle dance, offering crystal glasses of sparkling cider and plates of bite-sized desserts. The soft notes of the band rose once more, filling the room with a melody that felt hopeful and light. Obama turned to the microphone, again, this time with a new sense of purpose. He tapped gently on the stand, and the crowd fell silent. He began by thanking John Kennedy Jr. for his unexpected words and for reminding everyone of the deep roots of service and compassion that ran through American history. His voice was warm and steady, carrying genuine admiration. John's words brought new energy to our gathering, he said. They reminded us that this evening is about more than formal speeches. It's about human connections, about our shared responsibility to lift each other up. As he spoke, Obama glanced at Kennedy, who listened thoughtfully, occasionally nodding in agreement. Their shared glances told a story of mutual respect and understanding. It was as if two chapters of the same book had come together, blending past and present in a moment of shared purpose. The audience felt it too, leaning forward in their chairs and offering quiet smiles of approval. Obama continued, painting vivid pictures with his words. He spoke of a teacher in rural Mississippi who spent her summers building a library from donated books, told of a small group of veterans who banded together to restore a playground damaged by a hurricane. He shared stories of community gardens in Chicago, in tutoring programs in New York that brought volunteers and neighbors closer together. His examples were simple but powerful, showing how ordinary people could spark extraordinary change. Each story carried a clear message. Service was not reserved for public figures in grand halls. It belonged to every person who reached out to help a neighbor, who shared a meal with someone in need, who spoke up for justice in their own small way. The audience listened raptly, their attention fully on Obama's voice, which rose and fell. With genuine emotion, few guests closed their eyes, imagining the places and people he described. Others took gentle sips of cider, savoring both the drink and the stories. As he spoke, Obama felt the warmth of the room deepen. He saw the way Kennedy's presence had lifted the mood, transforming the gala from a formal affair into a living, breathing celebration of shared values. He realized that the unscripted moment had given him more than he could have planned on his own. It reminded him and everyone else of the unpredictable beauty of human connection. When Obama paused to take a breath, the applause rose again, soft and steady. He smiled, his eyes bright with gratitude. Then he shifted the evening's focus toward action. "Tonight, I want each of us to consider how we can bring service into our daily lives," he said. "It might mean volunteering an hour of your time, mentoring a young person, or simply checking in on a neighbor who lives alone." He held up a hand as though holding each suggestion carefully before releasing it into the room. He offered a gentle challenge: to make service a habit rather than an occasional act. He spoke of the changes that small, consistent efforts could bring over time. He described how a single person planting a tree could inspire a neighborhood to start a green team. He told of how sharing a story of resilience could encourage others to share their own strengths. His words wove together into a clear, hopeful vision, a nation where every person felt both the need and the power to serve. Obama looked at Kennedy once more, catching his eye and sharing a moment of unspoken understanding. Kennedy offered a small, encouraging nod, his expression one of genuine support. That silent exchange spoke volumes about respect between two men who carried different legacies but shared the same belief in service and hope. As the speech drew toward its close, Obama lifted his hands slightly, palms open to the audience. He spoke of unity, how service bridged divisions and brought people together. He reminded everyone that the challenges facing the nation were daunting, but not insurmountable when people joined hands in friendship and action. He asked the crowd to imagine a future where kindness guided decisions and where every act of service kindled a new spark of hope. When he finished, silence held for a heartbeat. Then the hall erupted into wholehearted applause cheers that rolled across the room like a tide of warmth. Obama stepped back from the microphone, his heart full. He turned to Kennedy and gave him a respectful nod before walking back to his seat. Kennedy rose and applauded too, raising his glass in salute before sitting again. The sight of the two men applauding each other drew smiles and renewed applause from the guests. At the head table, Obama sat down, leaning slightly toward Kennedy. He offered a soft word of thanks, just loud enough for Kennedy to hear. Kennedy replied with a nod and a genuine smile. The moments of tension from earlier in the evening felt distant now, placed by something far richer, a glow of shared purpose and mutual respect. The rest of the evening flowed with ease. Speeches from other honored guests built on the themes Obama had so eloquently raised. Guests mingled during the reception, talking excitedly about the stories they had heard. Some described how Kennedy's impromptu words had echoed in their minds, reminding them of their own family histories. Others spoke of Obama's challenge to bring service into everyday life, making concrete plans to volunteer or mentor. As the night wound down, the guests began to depart through grand double doors, stepping out into the cool evening air. The bright lights of the gala hall shone behind them, a beacon of unity and hope. Obama stood with Kennedy and Michelle just inside the doorway, waving farewell to departing attendees. Cameras flashed one last time, capturing the final moments of an evening that had become unforgettable. When the last guest left, the staff quietly began to tidy the tables and collect empty glasses. Obama, Kennedy, and Michelle moved to a corner of the hall where a small table held water and refreshments. They stood together, reflecting on what had just occurred. Kennedy placed his program in his pocket and turned to Obama. "Thank you," he said softly, "for listening and for inviting me back." Obama smiled warmly. "Thank you for speaking," he replied. "You reminded us why this work matters." Michelle joined in, offering her own words of appreciation. In that calm moment, surrounded by silent portraits of past presidents, the three of them shared a simple conversation about service, family, and hope. The grand hall, once echoing with footsteps and speeches, now held a calm stillness. Portraits on the walls seemed almost to lean in, as though they too approved of the evening's unexpected journey. And as the trio walked out together into the night, they carried with them a clear message that true leadership and lasting change often come from moments of openness, respect, and shared humanity moments that can turn a simple gala into a celebration of hearts united in service. Barack Obama stood just inside the grand doors of the hall, watching as the last of the guests slipped out into the gentle night. The rich glow of chandeliers illuminated the polished marble floor, now scattered with a few stray programs and empty glasses. He felt the calm after an unexpected storm of excitement and relief flow through him. Michelle stood at his side, offering him a quiet smile. John Kennedy Jr. lingered nearby, hands folded respectfully in front of him, his gaze thoughtful. The three of them shared a moment of quiet companionship, each reflecting on what had just transpired. Obama turned toward Kennedy and spoke first. "Tonight was more than just a ceremony," he said softly. "It became a reminder of why we serve." Kennedy nodded, his familiar brow crease softening. He replied, "I only meant to honor those we forget, the quiet heroes. I'm grateful you let me speak." Obama's eyes shone with appreciation. "Your words touched everyone in that room," he said. "You reminded us that history lives on in small acts of kindness, not just in grand gestures." Kennedy offered a humble smile. "Sometimes the smallest voice can make the loudest echo," he said. Michelle stepped forward, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "We all have stories worth sharing," she said. "And tonight, those stories brought us closer." Her tone was gentle but firm. She had seen her husband handle difficult choices many times, and tonight he had chosen inclusion over removal. She felt proud of him for trusting compassion over caution. Obama reached for her hand and squeezed it. He felt the warmth of family, of partnership, and of shared purpose around him. The staff began to clear the reception area, folding tablecloths and stacking chairs in neat piles. A soft rustle of fabric and the faint clink of glass on metal sounded behind them. The portraits of former presidents lining the walls watched over the scene, their painted eyes steady and approving. Obama imagined them nodding in silent respect at the night's unexpected turn. He pictured Lincoln's wise gaze, Roosevelt's determined smile, and Kennedy's own bright eyes looking back at his son. It felt fitting that their legacy had guided him through a moment when history met the present. So directly, he turned back to the two people beside him. "John," he said, "you carry a heavy legacy with grace." Kennedy's expression grew thoughtful. "Sometimes that legacy feels like both a blessing and a burden," he admitted. "But tonight reminded me that legacy is what we pass on through our actions." Obama nodded. "Exactly. And your actions tonight will inspire others to step up in their own communities." Kennedy's shoulders relaxed. He felt seen, not just as a Kennedy, but as a person committed to compassion. Michelle looked out the open doorway at the quiet courtyard beyond. Moonlight gleamed on perfectly trimmed hedges and the stone path that led to a small fountain. Air smelled faintly of jasmine and cool marble. "It's peaceful out there," she said. "Let's take a breath outside before we head back." Obama and Kennedy agreed. Together, they walked through the doors and onto the courtyard's stone floor. The night air embraced them, cool and fragrant. They stood by the fountain, its gentle splash filling the silence with calm rhythm. Stars sprinkled the dark sky above, undimmed by city lights. Obama closed his eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. He felt the weight of the day lift from his shoulders, replaced by quiet gratitude. Kennedy leaned against the fountain's edge, looking up at the sky. "Mom used to say that we're all just moments in time," he said softly. "But those moments can be the ones people remember forever, okay?" Obama opened his eyes and met Kennedy's gaze. "Well said," he replied. "Mom would have been proud." They spoke a little more about family, service, and hope. Obama shared memories of his own grandparents, whose kindness had shaped his values. Kennedy spoke of his mother's warm laughter and his father's quiet determination, smiling as their stories wove together into a tapestry of shared understanding. She felt the strength of their bond, the power of family and purpose intertwined. After a few minutes, they returned inside, pausing once more beneath the portraits. Obama placed a gentle hand on Kennedy's shoulder. "Thank you for being part of this tonight," he said. "You helped me see that leadership is as much about listening as it is about speaking. Kennedy's eyes softened. "And thank you for listening," he replied. "That is what brought us here together." Made their way to a small side room where staff had set out light refreshments for the trio: decaf coffee, herbal tea, and a plate of berries. The three of them sat around a small round table, the flicker of a single candle casting warm light on their faces. They sipped their drinks and shared quiet laughter, recalling small moments from the evening Michelle's encouraging glance. At the head table, the reporters hushed anticipation. The gentle hush that followed Kennedy's words, as the clock on the wall chimed softly. Signaling the hour late into the night, Obama rose and stretched. He felt content and at peace. He looked at Kennedy and Michelle. "I think tonight showed us all something important," he said. "That even in planned events, the human heart finds its own path." Michelle reached for his hand, and Kennedy offered a nod of agreement. They rose together and stepped back into the grand hall, now silent and still. Chairs were folded, tables stacked, and the last of the staff moved quietly in their uniforms. The chandeliers glowed softly above empty seats. Obama paused in the center of the room and imagined how this moment would live on in memory, not just for them, but for everyone who had been there. It would be a story of grace under pressure, of inclusion over exclusion, and of the unexpected beauty that comes when people listen to each other's hearts. He turned to his companions and smiled. "Let's go home," he said simply. They walked out of the hall together, the doors closing gently behind them. In the quiet corridor beyond, they paused for a final nod. No words were needed. Their shared experience spoke volumes. Outside, the night air felt cool on their faces. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of nearby trees. They walked toward the awaiting car in comfortable silence, each carrying the evening's lessons within. Then Barack Obama thought of the gala's theme service, and compassionate, felt its truth in every step. John Kennedy Jr. thought of his unexpected speech and how kindness had guided the night. Michelle thought of her husband's choice to embrace grace and felt proud of the way he led. As the car pulled away and the grand building faded in the rearview mirror, the three of them sat together, carrying with them a story worth remembering. It was a story not of drama or conflict, but of empathy and respect. A story that would be told in hushed conversations, featured in news articles, and remembered by everyone who had witnessed it firsthand. And most importantly, a story that would inspire countless others to choose understanding over division, and compassion over conflict. In the soft hum of the car's engine, Barack Obama looked out the window at the night sky. He felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that this evening's unexpected journey had become a testament to the power of listening, of inclusion, and of the simple, enduring truth that true leadership shines brightest when it lifts others up. And with that thought warming his heart, he closed his eyes for a moment and let the gentle rhythm of the road carry him forward.